The viewing deck of the Galactic Council station was huge. It stretched out like a massive dome made of clear crystal that showed the stars beyond. Captain Jake Morrison stood near the window with his hands behind his back. He wore his Earth military uniform, dark blue with silver buttons. Next to him stood Lisa Hayes, the best engineer Earth had. She held a datapad and kept checking the readings on her scanner. They had traveled 3 months to get here, to Proxima Centauri. This was where the big alien civilizations met to discuss trade, laws, and peace. Earth had finally been invited to join. After 200 years of sending radio signals into space and 50 years of building fusion engines, humanity was going to become part of something bigger. Jake felt nervous but tried not to show it. The aliens around them were tall, short, scaled, furred, and some looked like walking crystals. They spoke in languages that the translator device in his ear turned into English. Most of them ignored the two humans. A tall alien approached them. His skin was blue and smooth, and he had 4 arms. His eyes were golden and looked down at Jake with what seemed like amusement. This was Ambassador Krell, the leader of the Zephyr species. The Zephyr controlled 20 star systems and had the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. Captain Morrison, Krell said, his voice coming out smooth but cold. We are ready to present Earth with its welcoming gift. Jake nodded and followed Krell through the station. Lisa walked beside him, her eyes taking in everything. They passed through corridors that curved in strange ways, past rooms where aliens discussed things in languages the translator could not handle. Finally, they reached a docking bay. In the center of the bay floated a ship. It was big, maybe 800 feet long, with a dark gray hull that looked old and worn. The design was angular, with sharp edges and panels that did not quite line up. This was the Valkor's Pride, according to the information Krell had sent earlier. This vessel served the Zephyr fleet for nearly 3 centuries, Krell explained. His 3 companions, other council members from different species, stood nearby with small smiles on their faces. We are donating it to Earth so that your species may defend itself and contribute to galactic security. It is fully functional and ready for service. Jake looked at the ship. Something felt wrong. The hull looked dull, not like the shining vessels he had seen in the station's main docks. He glanced at Lisa, who was already scanning the ship with her device. May we inspect it? Jake asked, keeping his voice polite. Of course, Krell said, gesturing with one of his 4 hands. They took a small shuttle across the docking bay and entered the Valkor's Pride through an airlock. The moment Jake stepped inside, he knew this was bad. The corridor lights flickered. The air smelled stale and metallic. Panels on the walls hung loose, showing wiring beneath that sparked occasionally. Lisa moved ahead, scanning everything. Her face grew darker with each reading. They walked through the ship for an hour. The bridge had control panels that were cracked. Half the screens did not work. The engine room made Jake's heart sink. The power core, the heart of any starship, sat in the center of a large chamber. It should have glowed with energy. Instead, it looked dim and had a long crack running down one side. Green fluid leaked from the crack and pooled on the floor. This is a disaster, Lisa whispered to Jake when they were alone in a corridor. She showed him her datapad. The power core is almost dead. The weapon systems are completely corrupted. I cannot even access the firing controls. The hull has thousands of tiny cracks throughout. One good hit and this thing would break apart. The navigation system uses technology that is 300 years old. I do not even know if we can interface it with our computers. Jake clenched his jaw. He felt anger rising in his chest but pushed it down. They returned to the docking bay where Krell and the others waited. Well, Krell asked, are you pleased with your gift? Jake looked at the alien. He saw the amusement in those golden eyes. This was not a gift. This was an insult. They were giving Earth garbage and expecting them to be grateful. The other aliens at the council thought humans were primitive, barely able to leave their own solar system. This broken ship was their way of showing what they really thought of humanity. Around the docking bay, other aliens had gathered to watch. Some were pointing and talking quietly. A few were laughing. Jake recognized some of them from the briefings he had studied. The Vraxians with their thick armor plating, the Kelth with their multiple eyes, the Sarn who floated in containment suits. They all looked at the humans like they were children playing dress-up. Jake wanted to refuse. He wanted to tell Krell what he could do with this broken wreck. But he thought about Earth, about the billions of people back home who were watching this moment. If he refused, the Council might see it as humans being ungrateful. They might delay Earth's membership or impose trade restrictions. He made a choice. He smiled, though it felt like his face might crack. "This is very generous," he said clearly. "Earth accepts this gift with gratitude. We will make good use of this vessel." Krell seemed surprised for just a moment, then nodded. "Excellent. We will arrange for the ship to be transferred to Earth's custody. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Captain Morrison." The ceremony that followed was long and boring. Aliens gave speeches about cooperation and peace. Jake stood through it all, his mind elsewhere. Lisa stood beside him, and he could feel her anger matching his own. When it was finally over and they were alone in their quarters on the station, Lisa threw her datapad onto the bed. "They think we are idiots," she said. "That ship would not pass inspection at any Earth dock. It belongs in a scrapyard, not in service." Jake sat down and looked out the window at the stars. "I know," he said quietly. "But we are taking it anyway. Why?" "It is worthless." Jake turned to look at her. "Because we are going to fix it. We are going to take their trash and turn it into something that will make them regret laughing at us." Lisa stared at him. "Jake, that would take years." "The resources alone, I do not care," Jake interrupted. "They think we are primitive. They think we should be grateful for scraps. I am going to show them exactly what humans can do when someone tells us something is impossible." Lisa was quiet for a moment. Then a small smile appeared on her face. "You are crazy." "Probably," Jake agreed. "Are you in?" She picked up her datapad and started making notes. "I will need a team. Good engineers who think outside the box. And we will need approval from Earth Command." "Leave Earth Command to me," Jake said. He stood and looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valkor's pride waited, a broken, useless wreck that everyone expected them to fail with. Perfect. 2 days later, they left the Galactic Council station. The Valkor's pride was towed behind their transport ship by a thick cable. As they jumped into hyperspace for the long journey home, Jake made himself a promise. When they came back to this place, it would be in a ship that made the entire galaxy take notice. They gave Earth scrap. Now humans would show them what they could build from it. The wreck arrived at Luna Station 3 weeks later. Luna Station orbited Earth's moon and served as humanity's main military shipyard. When the Valkor's pride docked at the repair bay, a crowd gathered to see Earth's first alien warship. What they saw made many of them shake their heads. The ship looked worse in person than in the photos. The hull was covered in scorch marks and dents. Some panels were missing entirely, showing the framework underneath. When the external lights hit it at certain angles, you could see how the metal had worn thin in places. Admiral Pete Carson stood in the observation deck, watching as technicians began their inspection. He was a short, broad man with gray hair and a permanent frown. He had commanded Earth's space forces for 10 years and had seen plenty of bad situations. This might be the worst. Jake Morrison stood next to him, still in his travel uniform after the long journey. Lisa Hayes was already down in the docking bay, leading the initial inspection team. "This is what they gave us?" Carson asked, his voice flat. "This is supposed to be our ticket into galactic society." "Yes, sir," Jake replied. Carson was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "The politicians are already using this as ammunition. Half of them say we should reject the ship and demand something better. The other half say we should scrap it and forget about the whole thing. The media is calling it the junkyard special." "I want to rebuild it," Jake said. Carson turned to look at him. "You want to what?" "Rebuild it. Turn it into something functional. Something better than functional." The Admiral stared at him like he had grown a second head. "Captain, I have engineers telling me that ships should not even be pressurized. The hull integrity is shot. The power systems are ancient. We do not even understand half the alien technology, and the half we do understand is worthless. That is why I need a special team," Jake said. He had thought about this the entire journey home. "Give me 6 months and a budget. If we cannot make progress, you can scrap it. But if we can make it work, Earth will have something no one expects." Carson walked to the window and looked down at the ship. "What makes you think this is possible?" "Because they think it is impossible," Jake said. "The Zephyr, the Vraxians, all of them. They gave us this wreck because they think we are too primitive to do anything with it. I want to prove them wrong." The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. 6 months. I will get you a budget, but it will not be generous. Pick your team and get to work. But Morrison, if this fails, it is on you." "Yes, sir," Jake said. The next week was spent gathering people. Jake started with Lisa Hayes. She was brilliant, the kind of engineer who saw problems as puzzles to solve. She had designed parts of Earth's latest fusion drives and had a reputation for unconventional thinking. Then he found Ben Carter. Ben was from the Mars colonies, where equipment was always breaking down and supplies were limited. He had spent 15 years keeping mining ships running with whatever materials he could find. He was thin, with perpetual grease stains on his hands, and he could fix almost anything. Amy Chen joined next. She had worked on weapons systems for the Asteroid Defense Network. When space rocks threatened Earth, it was her gun designs that blew them apart. She was young, barely 30, but she understood energy weapons better than anyone else in the solar system. Last was Dr. Paul Martinez. He was older, maybe 60, with wild gray hair and a tendency to talk to himself. His theories about power generation were considered too radical for mainstream science. Most physicists thought he was crazy. Jake thought he was exactly what they needed. They gathered in a conference room at Luna Station. Jake stood at the head of the table and looked at his team. What we are about to do is either going to change everything or end our careers. The Galactic Council gave us a ship they think is worthless. I want to turn it into the best warship humanity has ever built. Ben laughed. You saw that thing, right? It is falling apart, I know, Jake said. That is why you are here. Each of you has done impossible things before. Now I need you to do it again. Lisa pulled up a hologram of the ship. I have been analyzing the alien technology. It is advanced, much more than ours in some ways, but it is also built with assumptions we do not share. The Ziffer designed for efficiency and elegance. Everything is streamlined and perfect, but that means when something breaks, the whole system fails. Humans build different, Ben added, catching on. We build things that can take a beating and keep working. Exactly, Lisa said. What if we do not try to copy their technology? What if we combine it with ours? Paul leaned forward, his eyes bright. The power core. The cracked antimatter containment system. We could wrap it in a human-made fusion reactor. Use the antimatter for high energy bursts and the fusion for steady power. It would be unstable but controllable. Amy nodded slowly. And the weapons. Their energy focusing system is corrupted, but the underlying principles are sound. If we combine that with our railgun technology, we could create something neither species has thought of. Jake felt hope rising in his chest. So it is possible. Possible, Lisa said, a grin spreading across her face. It is going to be incredible, or it will blow up in our faces. Probably 50-50 odds. They named the project Phoenix Initiative. The idea was simple. From the ashes of the alien wreck, they would build something new. They moved into a private bay at Luna Station and began the real work. The first month was spent taking the ship apart. Every panel, every wire, every system was removed and cataloged. They found problems everywhere. The life support system had been deliberately damaged. The shield generators were missing key components. Even the crew quarters had been stripped of anything valuable. They really did not want to give us anything useful. Ben muttered as he pulled out another broken circuit board. But they also found opportunities. The alien superstructure, the basic frame of the ship, was incredibly strong. The metal alloy was something Earth could not manufacture yet. If they could build around it rather than replacing it, they would have a foundation better than anything humans could make from scratch. Paul spent 3 weeks working on the power core. He built a containment field around the cracked antimatter chamber, then surrounded the whole thing with a fusion reactor. It was dangerous. The two systems were not meant to work together, but when he finally powered it on, the readings made everyone stop and stare. It is producing 3 times the energy output we predicted, Paul said, his hands shaking with excitement. The antimatter decay is actually feeding the fusion reaction. This should not work, but it does. Amy tackled the weapons next. The alien energy focusing system was elegant, but required enormous power to fire even once. She ripped it apart and rebuilt it using human railgun principles. Instead of one massive energy blast, her design would fire dozens of smaller projectiles accelerated by both magnetic fields and alien energy pulses. The result was a weapon that could keep firing as long as it had power. Ben worked on the hull. The alien armor was full of microfractures and could not be repaired. He proposed something radical. Instead of replacing it, they would add a second layer. Human-made carbon composite armor would be layered over the alien hull, creating a dual-layer system. If something hit them, the outer layer would absorb the impact while the inner layer kept the structure intact. Lisa coordinated everything, making sure the different systems would work together. She also tackled the navigation problem. The alien systems were too old to interface with human computers. After 2 weeks of frustration, she made a decision. They would rip out the alien navigation entirely and install human quantum computers. It was not elegant, but it would work. The second month brought their first major crisis. During a test of the power core, the antimatter containment field fluctuated. The entire reactor started to overload. Paul scrambled to shut it down, but the systems were not responding. The temperature in the engine room climbed to dangerous levels. Ben ran into the room wearing a heat suit. He manually disconnected the power feeds, burning his hands even through the protective gloves. The reactor shut down seconds before it would have exploded, potentially destroying Luna Station and everyone on it. They sat in the medical bay afterward, shaken. Ben's hands were wrapped in bandages. Paul looked like he had aged 10 years. "We almost killed everyone," Amy said quietly. Jake knew this was the moment. They could quit now, admit defeat, and no one would blame them. Or they could push forward. What went wrong? He asked Paul. The physicist looked up. The power surge. The system could not handle the sudden spike in energy. The alien technology wants to discharge everything at once, but our fusion system builds up gradually. "Can you fix it?" Jake asked. Paul thought for a moment. Then he smiled, a bit crazy. "Fix it? No, but I can use it. What if we design the system to surge on purpose? Give weapons or shields massive power boosts for short periods." Lisa sat up straighter. "That would give us tactical flexibility. We could adapt in combat, something the aliens cannot do with their stable systems." They got back to work. The crisis had become an opportunity. That, Jake realized, was how they would win. Every problem would be turned into an advantage. By the end of the third month, the ship was starting to look different. It was still ugly, with mismatched panels and exposed systems, but it was. Month 4 began with another disaster. The weapon systems that Amy had designed looked perfect on paper. When they tried to test them, every single gun shorted out within seconds. Sparks flew from the control panels and 2 whole sections of the weapons grid went dark. Amy stood in the weapons bay, staring at the smoking remains of her control systems. She had spent 6 weeks building this. Now it was junk. What happened? Jake asked, keeping his voice calm. "Too much power draw," Amy said, frustrated. "The railguns need a massive energy spike to fire. The alien focusing system also needs a massive spike. When I try to fire them together, the whole power grid collapses. I do not have enough juice to run both systems." Lisa came down to look at the problem. She stood there for 20 minutes just staring at the weapon arrays. Then she laughed. "You are trying to fire everything at once. That is how weapons work," Amy said. "You shoot at the enemy." "That is how alien weapons work," Lisa corrected. "They build these huge guns that fire one massive shot. But humans do not fight that way. We use sustained fire, volleys. Why are you trying to make a human weapon work like an alien one?" Amy blinked. Then she started pulling up schematics on her datapad. "If I stagger the firing sequence, rotate which guns are active at any moment, I could keep a constant barrage going without overloading the power grid. It would not be as much damage in a single hit, but over time you would put out way more firepower," Lisa finished, "and the enemy could not adapt because the firing pattern would keep changing." They spent the next week rebuilding the weapon systems. Instead of 8 guns firing together, Amy programmed them to fire in cascading waves. Gun 1 would fire, then Gun 2, then Gun 3. Each shot coming a fraction of a second after the last. The power draw was manageable, and the result was a continuous stream of projectiles that could hammer a target without pause. When they tested it on an old satellite marked for destruction, the results were incredible. The satellite did not explode. It just came apart, shredded by dozens of impacts over 10 seconds. Amy watched the replay 3 times, grinning. "That is beautiful," she said. Ben faced his own crisis with the hull. The dual-layer armor system worked in theory. In practice, the 2 layers kept separating. The human carbon composite was too rigid, and when the ship moved or turned, the armor plates would shift and create gaps. He tried different attachment methods. Bolts, magnetic clamps, welding. Nothing worked right. The alien hull curved in ways that human materials were not designed for. He was sitting in the cargo bay, surrounded by broken armor plates, when the solution came to him. He was not trying to attach human armor to an alien ship. He was trying to make a new hull that used both materials. What if instead of plates he used a flexible composite, something that could bend and move with the ship? He spent 3 days in the materials lab, mixing different compounds. The result was not pretty. It looked like gray foam, thick and rough, but when he tested it, the material absorbed impacts like a sponge and then hardened back to its original shape. It was self-repairing, at least partially. He sprayed the compound over the alien hull in layers, building it up until it was 3 feet thick in some places. When he was done, the ship looked lumpy and strange. But when they fired test weapons at it, the shots just sank into the foam-like material and stopped. The energy dispersed, spread out over the whole section instead of concentrated at one point. "It is ugly," Admiral Carson said when he came to inspect the progress. "It works," Ben replied, and that was all that mattered. Paul's power core continued to be unstable. The surges they had learned to use were powerful but unpredictable. Sometimes the reactor would deliver exactly the energy needed. Other times it would spike too high or too low. It made planning difficult. He tried different containment field configurations. He adjusted the fusion reactor timing. Nothing made the system stable. Finally, he stopped trying to fix it and instead built around it. He added sensors throughout the power system that could predict when a surge was coming. Then he built a distribution network that could rapidly redirect power wherever it was needed. The result was controlled chaos. The reactor still surged unpredictably, but now the ship could use those surges. If sensors detected incoming fire, power would automatically flood to the shields. If weapons were charging, the surge would go there instead. The ship became adaptive, responding to situations faster than any crew could manually control. "It is like the ship is alive," Lisa said, watching the power flows on her screen. "It is reacting to threats automatically." "Is that safe?" Jake asked. "Probably not," Paul admitted, "but it is effective." The navigation system gave them trouble next. The human quantum computers Lisa had installed worked perfectly. They could calculate courses faster than anything the aliens used. But the interface with the rest of the ship was problematic. The alien systems expected certain inputs that the human computers could not provide. Lisa spent 2 weeks writing translation software, creating a bridge between human and alien technology. It was tedious work. Line after line of code that had to be perfect. One mistake and the whole system would crash. When she finally got it working, the results exceeded expectations. The navigation system could plot courses through space that the alien ships could not match. It could calculate micro-adjustments on the fly, dodging obstacles that other vessels would not even see coming. "We are more maneuverable than ships half our size," Lisa reported. "The aliens build for straight-line speed. We build for flexibility." They added other innovations as the weeks passed. Ben installed point defense guns taken from Earth's orbital debris cleanup systems. They were designed to shoot down small, fast objects like space junk. Against incoming missiles or fighters, they would be devastating. Amy built an electronic warfare suite using human computer systems. It could hack alien sensors, send false signals, and confuse targeting systems. The aliens had never needed such systems because they all use compatible technology. Humans, coming from outside their technology base, could exploit that weakness. Lisa designed a shield system that was completely different from alien shields. Instead of one stable frequency, the human shields would constantly shift through dozens of frequencies per second. Any weapon that tried to match the shield frequency and punch through would find the frequency had already changed. Month 5 brought the first full system test. They powered up everything at once to see if the ship could handle it. For 10 minutes, everything worked perfectly. Then the power core surged too high. The weapons tried to fire, the shields activated, and the navigation system attempted an emergency course correction all at the same time. The ship lurched. Lights flickered throughout the vessel. 3 decks lost life support for 30 seconds. The weapons bay filled with smoke. When the chaos finally settled, half the systems were offline and would need repairs. "That was exciting," Ben said, coughing from the smoke. They spent the next 2 weeks fixing everything and adding more safeguards. The problem was coordination. Every system worked alone, but together they fought for resources and power. They needed a central control system that could manage everything. Lisa built an artificial intelligence, though she hated calling it that. It was more like a very smart coordination program. It would monitor all ship systems and make decisions about power allocation and system priority in real time. No human crew could react fast enough to manage everything, but a computer could. The AI, which they named Phoenix after the project, changed everything. When they ran the test again, the ship's systems worked together smoothly. Phoenix predicted power needs and allocated resources before they were requested. It coordinated weapons fire with shield modulation and navigation changes. It is learning, Paul said, watching the diagnostic data. Every time we run a test, it gets better at managing the systems. Is it actually intelligent? Jake asked. No, Lisa said. It is just very good at pattern recognition and prediction. But the effect is the same. The ship responds faster than any crew could manage manually. Month 6 arrived. Admiral Carson demanded a flight test. The ship, now officially christened the Defiance, was taken out of the construction bay for the first time under its own power. 300 crew members were aboard, trained on the new systems. Jake sat in the captain's chair on the bridge. It was a human-style chair, comfortable and practical, installed in a bridge that was half alien design and half human retrofit. Lisa was at the engineering station. Amy controlled weapons. Ben managed damage control. Paul monitored the power systems. All crew prepare for engine start, Jake said into the ship-wide comm. The reactor came online. The surge was immediate and powerful. Lights brightened throughout the ship. The engines hummed with energy that made the deck plates vibrate. We are reading power levels 3 times higher than any Earth ship, Paul reported, and that is just the baseline. If I let it surge, we could hit 5 times. Navigation ready, Lisa said. All systems green. Jake took a breath. Take us out. The Defiance moved forward. It was not a smooth, elegant motion like alien ships. It was more like a controlled surge of power, the ship leaping forward and then settling into a steady acceleration. But the speed was incredible. Within minutes, they had cleared Luna's orbit and were heading. The demonstration was scheduled in neutral space near the Sirius system. It took the Defiance 4 days to reach the location, traveling through hyperspace lanes that human ships had only recently learned to navigate. When they dropped out of hyperspace, Jake was surprised by how many ships were waiting. At least 30 vessels floated in the designated area. Council observer ships from a dozen different species had come to watch. Some were small diplomatic vessels, others were larger research ships equipped with sensors to record everything. And there, gleaming in the light of Sirius, was a Zephyr destroyer, its sleek hull a sharp contrast to the Defiance's rough exterior. They brought a warship, Amy noted from her station. That seems excessive for a demonstration. They want to make a point, Lisa said. Show us how real military vessels look compared to our retrofit. Jake opened a communication channel. This is Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Defiance. We are ready to begin the demonstration, a voice responded immediately. It was Ambassador Krell, though he was not physically present. His hologram appeared on the main screen. Captain Morrison, welcome. We are eager to see what you have accomplished with our gift. Please proceed with your weapon tests and flight maneuvers at your convenience. The tone was polite, but Jake heard the condescension underneath. Krell expected this to be embarrassing for humanity. The other council members probably had similar expectations. Beginning weapon test, Jake announced. Firing at designated targets. The Zephyr had provided several drone targets, unmanned vessels about the size of small fighters. They floated in a line 500 miles away. For most weapons, this was extreme range. Amy, light them up, Jake said. With pleasure, Amy replied. Her fingers moved across her control panel. Engaging primary weapon systems. The Defiance's railguns opened fire. The cascading barrage Amy had designed came to life. Each gun firing in sequence so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. The projectiles, accelerated by both magnetic fields and alien energy pulses, crossed the distance in seconds. The first drone simply came apart. The second and third followed immediately after. The fourth exploded as a projectile hit something volatile. The fifth lasted a few seconds longer, but sustained fire from multiple guns shredded it piece by piece. Total engagement time, 11 seconds. There was silence on the communication channels. Jake allowed himself a small smile. Weapon test complete. Beginning maneuverability demonstration. Lisa, show them what we can do, he said. Lisa's hands flew over her controls. The Defiance began to move. It was not the smooth, graceful motion of alien ships. It was aggressive, almost violent. The ship twisted and rolled, accelerated and decelerated, moved in patterns that seemed to ignore its own mass and momentum. The human quantum computers calculated trajectories impossible for biological pilots. The flexible armor Ben had designed allowed the ship to handle stress that would tear other vessels apart. The power core surged energy to the engines in bursts, giving the Defiance sudden speed changes that no alien ship could match. They performed loops, spiral patterns, emergency stops from full speed. Lisa even managed a maneuver she had designed specifically for this demonstration. The Defiance flipped completely around while still moving forward, allowing its weapons to fire behind it without changing course. Physics says that should not work, Paul muttered from his station, but he was grinning. After 10 minutes of maneuvers, Jake brought the ship to a stop near the observer fleet. Demonstration complete. The Defiance is ready for... An alarm cut him off. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Lisa's screen showed new contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Lots of them. We have incoming ships, Lisa announced, her voice tense. 12 vessels, unknown configuration. They are not broadcasting identification codes. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Show me. The main screen changed to show the new arrivals. The ships were angular and dark, painted in colors that seemed to absorb light. Jake recognized them from intelligence briefings. Kraith raiders. The Kraith had been expelled from the Galactic Council 50 years ago for attacking civilian populations. They survived by raiding frontier worlds and ambushing trading vessels. 12 of their ships against an unarmed observer fleet was a nightmare scenario. This is the Ziffer destroyer Bright Sword. A new voice cut across the communication channels. All civilian vessels move away from the raiders. We will engage. The Ziffer destroyer began moving toward the Kraith fleet. It was a beautiful ship, twice the size of the Defiance, with weapons that could crack asteroids. But it was alone and outnumbered. Jake made his decision instantly. Battle stations. Amy, charge all weapons. Lisa, bring the reactor to full power. Paul, remove all safety limiters. Captain, we are not authorized to engage in combat, his second officer said. We are here for a demonstration only. Those people are about to die, Jake said flatly. I am not going to sit here and watch. Amy, target the nearest Kraith vessel. Lisa, plot an intercept course. On the communication channel, the Zephyr captain was practically shouting at him. Earth vessels, stand down. You are not equipped for combat. Retreat to a safe distance, Jake ignored him. All crew, this is the captain. We are going into combat. I know we have only done training exercises. I know the ship was built from scrap. But right now, we are the only thing standing between those raiders and a lot of innocent people. I need everyone to do their job like we practiced. Trust your training. Trust each other. And trust this ship. He switched to the general channel. Kraith vessels, this is Captain Morrison of the Earthship Defiance. Break off your attack and leave this system immediately. The response was laughter. One of the Kraith captains replied in broken standard. Humans, go away, little ones. This is not your concern. Wrong answer, Jake said. Amy, weapons free, engage. The Defiance shot forward. The sudden acceleration caught everyone by surprise, including the Kraith. The ship closed the distance to the nearest raider in seconds. Amy's weapons opened fire. The cascading barrage hit the Kraith ship like a hammer. The raiders' shields flared bright and then collapsed under sustained fire. Railgun projectiles punched through the hull, tearing into the vessel's interior. Within 5 seconds, the raider was venting atmosphere and spinning out of control. Target destroyed, Amy reported, shock evident in her voice. I did not think that would work so fast. Next target, Jake ordered. The remaining Kraith ships reacted. They spread out, trying to surround the Defiance. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the human ship. The shields that Lisa had designed, constantly shifting frequencies, absorbed most of the impact. What got through hit the foam-like armor Ben had created, the energy dispersing across the hull. Shields holding at 70%, Lisa called out. Hull integrity good. Minor damage to Section 4. Jake watched the tactical display. The Kraith were trying to fight like they always did, with coordinated strikes from multiple angles. But the Defiance was not fighting like an alien ship. It was not trying to line up perfect shots or maintain formation. It was moving constantly, aggressively, never staying still long enough to be an easy target. The Phoenix AI coordinated everything. When shields weakened in one section, power automatically shifted to strengthen them. When weapons were charged and ready, the ship would briefly steady to allow a firing solution. When enemies lined up for an attack, the navigation system would predict and dodge before they fired. Their targeting systems cannot track us, Amy said, watching her screen. We are moving too erratically. They keep shooting where we were, not where we are. 3 more Kraith ships went down in the next 2 minutes. One took a direct hit from the Defiance's weapons that split it in half. Another was caught in a sustained barrage that overwhelmed its shields and turned its armor into molten metal. The third tried to ram the Defiance and missed when Lisa dodged at the last second, leaving it exposed to a weapons volley that crippled its engines. The Zephyr destroyer had engaged 2 Kraith ships on the other side of the battlefield. Jake could see it trading fire with the raiders, its powerful weapons taking down one enemy while taking damage from the other. Captain, 4 Kraith ships are breaking off to attack the civilian vessels, Lisa warned. Like hell they are, Jake growled. Full-speed intercept. Amy, I need maximum firepower. The Defiance's reactor surged. Paul had removed all the safety limiters, and now the antimatter core was producing energy at levels that should have been impossible. The ship shot forward, covering the distance to the fleeing Kraith vessels in seconds. Amy fired everything. Not in the carefully controlled cascades she had practiced, but all at once, every gun dumping its full power into the Kraith formation. The power drain made the lights dim throughout the ship and knocked out 3 non-essential systems, but the effect was devastating. 2 Kraith ships simply came apart under the barrage. The third lost all power and went dark. The fourth veered away, damaged and venting plasma from its engines. We are overheating, Paul shouted. The reactor is in the red zone. We need to back off. Not yet, Jake said. He watched the tactical display. 8 Kraith ships destroyed or disabled, 4 remaining, and they were regrouping. 1 more push. Lisa, get us in close. Amy concentrated fire on the lead ship. The Defiance charged into the remaining Kraith formation. It was reckless. News of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than light. By the time the Defiance limped back to Luna Station for repairs, half the known civilizations had seen recordings of the engagement. The footage was analyzed by military strategists on 100 worlds. The fight was discussed in alien military academies. The ship that was supposed to be a joke had become the most talked-about vessel in the galaxy. Jake stood in the repair bay 2 weeks later, watching crews work on the Defiance. The damage was extensive but repairable. Entire sections of armor had been burned away. 3 weapons emplacements needed complete replacement. 2 decks had lost atmosphere during the battle and were being rebuilt from the frame up. But the ship was intact. More than that, it had proven something that shook the foundations of galactic society. Humans could not just survive among the stars. They could compete. They could win. Admiral Carson approached, holding a datapad. He looked tired but satisfied. You have been summoned to address the Galactic Council. Full assembly, not just the representatives. They want answers about what? Jake asked. About everything. How you modified the ship. What technologies you used. Your tactics. There are also 36 requests from smaller species, asking about possible alliances with Earth, and the Zephyr have submitted a formal apology for their treatment of humanity at the welcome ceremony. Jake raised his eyebrows. Krell apologized. In writing. It is making waves. The Zephyr never apologized to anyone. Carson handed him the datapad. You are also being promoted to Admiral. Earth Command wants you to oversee the construction of our new fleet. New fleet? Carson gestured at the Defiance. You proved the concept works. Now we are going to build more. The politicians have approved funding for 20 new ships based on the Defiance design. Each one will use human-alien hybrid technology. Lisa, Ben, Amy, and Paul have already started working on the blueprints. Jake felt a surge of pride. The Phoenix Initiative was not just one ship anymore. It was becoming the foundation of Earth's military presence in space. When do I address the Council? 2 days. Your crew is coming with you. The whole galaxy wants to meet the people who built the impossible ship. The Galactic Council chamber was even more impressive than the station where Jake had first met the aliens. It was a massive sphere, with seating arranged in concentric rings that surrounded a central platform. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, representatives from every member species and dozens of observer civilizations. Jake walked onto the central platform with Lisa, Ben, Amy, and Paul beside him. Admiral Carson had come as well, wearing his full-dress uniform. The humans looked small and out of place among the towering aliens and exotic species that filled the chamber. Ambassador Krell stood at a podium on the highest ring. His forearms were crossed and his golden eyes studied the humans carefully. Captain Morrison, Engineer Hayes, and the crew of the Defiance, you have been invited here to explain your achievements. The vessel you modified has capabilities that challenge our understanding of military technology. Please share with us how this was accomplished. Jake had prepared a speech, something diplomatic and careful, but standing here looking at all these aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive, he decided to speak plainly instead. You gave us garbage, he said, his voice carrying through the chamber. The Valkor's pride was not a gift. It was an insult. You gave us a ship you had stripped of everything valuable, something so broken that none of your species would use it. You expected us to fail, to be grateful for scraps while you laughed at us. The chamber was silent. Krell's expression was unreadable. Jake continued. But you made a mistake. You assumed that because we are new to space, we must be inferior. You forgot that humanity got to the stars through centuries of solving impossible problems. We come from a world where resources were limited and survival meant innovation. We learned to make things work with whatever we had. Lisa stepped forward. The technology on the Valkor's pride was advanced but specialized. Alien species built for perfection. Each system is optimized for one specific function. But humans build for adaptability. We took your technology and combined it with ours. The power core uses both antimatter and fusion. The weapons blend your energy systems with our kinetic principles. The armor is a hybrid of your alloys and our composites. The result, Amy added, is a ship that does not fit your expectations. It is not elegant or perfect, but it is effective. It can adapt to situations faster than any vessel built by a single species because it draws from multiple technological traditions. Ben spoke next. You build ships that are beautiful. We build ships that work. When something breaks, you replace the whole system. When something breaks for us, we fix it with whatever is available. The Defiance is ugly by your standards, but it can take damage that would destroy your ships and keep fighting. Dr. Paul Martinez smiled. You also made assumptions about physical laws. You believe certain combinations of technology are impossible because your mathematics say so. Human mathematics says the same thing, but we tried it anyway and it works. Sometimes the impossible just means nobody has figured it out yet. Jake let his team's words sink in before continuing. The Defiance is not just a ship. It is proof that humanity belongs in the galaxy, not as a junior partner, not as students who need to copy their betters. We belong here as equals, bringing our own perspective and innovation. He paused, looking around the chamber. You gave us scrap because you thought we were weak. You were wrong, and if you try to limit our development or treat us as inferior again, we will prove you wrong again. Humanity is done accepting scraps. The silence in the chamber continued for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, one alien began to clap. Then another. Within seconds, half the chamber was applauding. Not the major powers like the Zephyr and Vraxians, who looked uncomfortable, but the smaller species, the ones who had also felt overshadowed by the dominant civilizations. A representative from the Kelth stood. She was small, barely 4 feet tall, with multiple eyes and delicate features. The Kelth government wishes to propose a formal alliance with Earth. We believe human innovation combined with Kelth sensor technology could benefit both our peoples. Another alien stood, then another. Proposals for trade, technology exchange, mutual defense pacts. The smaller species saw in humanity what Jake had hoped they would, an alternative to the dominance of the major powers. Krell raised one hand for silence. The Galactic Council recognizes Earth's achievements. We propose upgrading humanity's status from provisional member to full member, with all associated rights and privileges. Are there any objections? There were none. Even the Vraxians, who had been among the most dismissive of humanity, voted in favor. Then it is settled, Krell said. He looked directly at Jake. Captain Morrison, or should I say Admiral Morrison, I personally apologize for my species' treatment of your people. We allowed arrogance to blind us to your potential. The Zephyr government hopes to establish better relations with Earth in the future. Jake nodded. It was not a friendship, not yet. But it was respect, and that was more than enough. 3 months later, Jake stood in a new construction bay at Luna Station. 5 hulls were taking shape, each one based on the Defiance but refined and improved. Lisa had taken the lessons from the first ship and was designing these new vessels to be even more capable. Ben was developing better armor. Amy was creating new weapon systems. Paul was building power cores that were stable but still maintained the surge capability that made human ships unique. The galaxy had changed. More importantly, humanity's place in it had changed. Earth was no longer the newcomer begging for acceptance. They were a power in their own right, with technology and tactics that made even the oldest civilizations pay attention. Admiral Carson joined Jake at the observation window. The politicians are calling this the human revolution. They are saying we have changed galactic warfare forever. That might be overstating it, Jake said. Maybe. But look at what is happening. Carson gestured at the construction bay. We have partnership agreements with 18 different species. The Kelth are sharing their sensor technology. The Sarn are teaching us advanced metallurgy. The Thex want to learn our computer programming methods. All because we took a pile of scrap and turned it into something that scared the major powers. Jake thought about the past year, the humiliation at the council station, the months of exhausting work, the terrifying battle where they had come so close to dying, and now watching humanity's new fleet take shape, he felt something he had not expected. Pride, yes. Relief that they had succeeded. But also responsibility. Earth was no longer isolated. They were part of something bigger now, with allies depending on them and rivals watching for weakness. What are you thinking about? Carson asked. The future, Jake said. We proved we can build ships from scrap. Now we need to prove we can lead, that we can be the kind of civilization others want to follow, not just respect out of fear. That is a problem for tomorrow, Carson said. Today you should enjoy the victory. You and your team did something impossible. You took what was meant to be an insult and turned it into humanity's greatest achievement. Jake looked at the Defiance, still in its repair dock nearby. The ship would never be pretty. The armor was mismatched,